First, it was about security. Then the real reason seemed to be mineral deposits. And now it seems to be just avarice. Donald Trump's desire for Greenland seems to be just about greed. The self-indulgence of one who can bully everyone. The craving to be that person in history who adds the biggest territory to the US nation.
This enormous unsecured island is actually part of North America, on the northern frontier of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory.
This is the story of Donald Trump and what seems to be his gluttony that hides underneath his threats to grab this land of ice and glaciers. NATO is staring at its worst internal crisis in its 76-year history because the President of the United States of America is upset. He's upset he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. Donald Trump sent a message to Norway's Prime Minister stating, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America." Donald Trump did not leave it at that. His letter went on to state that Denmark is incapable of protecting Greenland from Russia and China, and so Trump will soon have to have it for himself. The sheer size of Greenland appears to be part of the lure, the greed of Donald Trump. The reality that most of the territory is uninhabitable does not seem to bother the realtor in him. It is, after all, the ultimate real estate prize, a property bigger than Alaska. If Trump prevails, he will have pulled off the largest land acquisition in American history, even larger than when the US bought Alaska from Russia for about 2 cents an acre in 1867. Greenland is a long island surrounded by a fringe of smaller islands. It lies between the Atlantic and the Arctic Oceans, off the northeast coast of America. 100 years ago, 86% of its 2 million square kilometer area used to be under an ice cap. A century later, the ice cap covers 80% and continues to decrease, slowly revealing what lies underneath. Because maybe therein also lies the true value of this cold, nearly barren, but massive island stuck between the old world and the new. Geographically, Greenland is part of the North American continent, but politically and culturally, it is European. In 1721, a Danish-Norwegian, Hans Egede, started a settlement near what is now Greenland's capital, Nuuk. In 1776, Denmark established sovereignty over Greenland, and it remained a Danish colony till 1953, when it became a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. In 1979, Greenland gained home rule. In 1983, it left the then European Community. The Greenland Self-Government Act, ratified by the Danish Parliament in 2009, set out a process for Greenland to gain independence, requiring consent from Greenland's parliament and its people in a referendum, with independence terms to be negotiated with Denmark. No framework exists on the buying and selling of Greenland.
The acquisition of Greenland by the United States is not a new idea. This is something that presidents dating back to the 1800s have said is advantageous for America's national security. The president has been very open and clear with all of you and with the world that he views it in the best interest of the United States to deter Russian and Chinese aggression in the Arctic region. And so that's why his team is currently talking about what a potential purchase would look like.
Greenland is an area of great strategic value due to its size and position, situated as it is between US-Canada, Europe and Russia. Since the Second World War, Greenland has been integrated into US early warning systems. The US Thule Air Base, renamed Pitufik Space Base, halfway between New York and Moscow, is part of their missile defense shield. After the war in 1946, the United States made a takeover offer of $100 million gold, which was rejected by Denmark.
I believe in the international rules. Of course, I also believe that you do not change borders by force either one way or another. It is not only the position of Denmark and the Danish kingdom, fortunately, of Europe too. So I hope that the people will also take note of the once again significant European support that we are receiving.
Greenland is practically uninhabitable. Humans live along the coast, mostly to the west and south of the island. The entire population of this massive island is around 57,000, nearly all of them of Inuit ethnicity. Greenland has no industry, there is no road network, and most supplies arrive by air and sea. %90 of its exports come from fishing. Denmark subsidizes around 60% of Greenland's budget, which accounts for 25 to 30% of its GDP. Greenland is said to be eyed by Russia and China for its potential. In 2016, it even came to light that the main shareholder of an Australian mining company in Greenland was Chinese. By 2020, close to 20% of Greenland's exports were to China. Melting land and sea ice is making Greenland's rich mineral and hydrocarbon deposits more accessible. Greenland has large deposits of rare earth elements. Estimates put them at around 10% of the world total. Copper and cryolite have been mined in Greenland since the mid-19th century, and in the 20th century, zinc, lead and silver were also mined. Coal mining began in 1906. Uranium was discovered in 1956. The 1970s saw the start of offshore oil and gas exploration. Significant offshore oil and gas reserves are estimated to lie to the northeast and northwest of Greenland. No wonder then that outsiders want an insight into Greenland. It has also been an attraction for flamboyant, convicted felons. In fact, that is how it got its name. Around 1,000 years ago, Erik the Red, an Icelandic murderer who was exiled to the island, called it Greenland in hopes that the name would attract other settlers. A millennium later, Greenland, as white as it has been for 2.5 million years, continues to attract not settlers but profiteers of the world.
We are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor.
President Donald Trump, for all practical purposes, seems to be completely invested in the idea of Greenland being the legacy he leaves behind for history, judgments aside. In a Truth Social post, he gave an ultimatum to Europe. If they didn't allow the complete and total purchase of Greenland, he would slap tariffs on a group of European countries, 10% in February and then 25% in June. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, formed in 1949 as a collective defense pact against Soviet expansion. It united North America and Europe to safeguard freedom with a core principle: an attack on one is an attack on all. The US is crucial to NATO because not only did it provide the initial security umbrella and economic aid to rebuild Europe after the devastation of World War II, but also because of the military and economic power it projects to ensure North American and European security. Europe still remains heavily reliant on the United States for support through NATO, a case in point being Russia's war with Ukraine. That had been the biggest reason that European leaders had shown such restraint in their current dealings with Trump. They accepted higher US tariffs, they paid their respects in a series of visits to the White House. They were subdued in their criticism when Trump appeared to favor Russia's position over Ukraine's. And on Venezuela, they did not comment.
We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
As the US president seemed to firm his desire, European leaders finally began to respond in kind. Quite a few of the major ones went on record signaling that they would not be bullied. Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain called the ultimatum completely wrong. He tweeted that UK's position on Greenland is very clear. It is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and its future is a matter for Greenlanders and the Danes. President Emmanuel Macron of France went so far as to say Europe should retaliate with the strongest trade tool at its disposal, officially called the anti-coercion instrument, better known as Europe's trade bazooka. It has never been invoked, not even when Trump imposed tariffs on EU countries in 2025. The European Union Parliament held off ratifying a significant key trade deal with the United States. With that, the 27-nation bloc, representing the single largest market in the world, sent out a strong message of discontent to the White House.
Europe's own history teaches us that the desire for freedom
Across Europe, stretching till Greenland, a groundswell of support broke out for standing up to Trump. Greenland Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen led a march through capital Nuuk, raising a Greenlandic flag. In Denmark, thousands marched to the US Embassy in Copenhagen.
Greenland is my home country. To say that we won't tolerate that way of being treated as a commodity that you can just buy. So Greenland is our country and it belongs to us.
Meanwhile, Greenland loomed large at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Building up to Donald Trump's arrival, Greenland was what everyone was talking about. The suspense mounted as Air Force One developed a snag and Trump had to go back and change aircraft.
We appreciate him here, so let me introduce and welcome back to Davos the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Finally, when Trump took the main stage at Davos, a packed auditorium and the world waited for what he would say.
Would you like me to say a few words of Greenland? We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
A few hours later, Trump met Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO.
I always tell the Europeans you are completely committed to NATO, but there is also that one irritant, and it is this factor, that the Europeans were not paying the same as the US was paying.
On a Truth Social post, he wrote that after the very productive meeting, he had formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland. In fact, the entire Arctic region. He also wrote that, based upon this understanding, I will not be imposing the tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st. Europe for the moment breathed a sigh of relief, as did global trade interests. But everyone remains wary as to what might come next. The general feeling around the world has possibly been best summed up by a 126-year-old Russian newspaper, Moskovsky Komsomolets, as quoted by the American media giant CNN. President Donald Trump has been referred to as the chief doctor of the madhouse who has gone mad too, and that everything has gone to pieces.